With the rate of mental health disorders increasing in today's day and age, the stigma around it is also starting to turn around. People are now realizing how mental illnesses can impact someone's everyday life, which is leading to research and awareness to increase substantially as well. Also, this is leading to mental health disorders to be seen as an issue that is just as, or even more important than physical problems. With many major recent worldwide events such as COVID-19 and the exponential increase in usage of electronic devices, mental illness is more relevant than ever before, and the stigma of not caring about it is rapidly declining. In order to truly get a grasp of the severity of mental health and the illnesses towards it, it's important to look at the stigmas around it through time and notice that they have shifted. Mental illnesses have always been undermined and overlooked until recently due to the fact that it was a type of illness that people could not physically notice. This led to people making assumptions about mental disorders that were not true because they could not accept it as a physical issue. Due to this, people believed the mental disorders were due to supernatural causes or some sort of demonic occurrence up until the 20th century. Only after the beginning of the 20th century did people start to consider it as a real disease. While this was a major step in the right direction, progress still needed to be made. Then, in the 21st century, awareness and research for mental illnesses increased drastically. As a matter of fact, reports of depression increased by 52% from 2005 to 2017. This was a major stride for mental health awareness in just a 12-year span. In more recent times, factors such as COVID-19 has only increased people's acceptance of help with mental health issues due to the high rates of anxiety and depression that the pandemic caused. Along with that, increase in social media usage and quick spreading of content has led people to be more aware of mental disorders through spreading of facts or videos from people that suffer from mental illnesses that depict what it is like living with it on a day-to-day basis. While it is evident to see progress moving in the right direction in the world of mental health and disorders, there is still a lot more work to be done. Statistics are extremely important in understanding mental health due to the fact that they look past all the biases and stigmas and give the pure facts regarding how mental disorders impact people on such a large scale. Tracking mental disorders on such a large scale shows how it has its impact on entire nations and even the entire world. For instance, in the US, 1 in 5 or 20% of Americans have experienced mental illness. And while some may think that it's a vast minority of the population, that is about 66.38 million people, which is a significant amount of individuals to be affected by mental illness. Along with that, suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the US, and it climbs up to 3rd for people from the age of 15 to 19, which really shows how mental illness is impacting our youth. And with 90% of suicides being caused by mental illnesses, it shows how it is starting to impact people's lives in entire populations. Despite the numbers pointing to how severe mental disorders are, 60% of people with mental illness still do not seek treatment. Whether this is due to stigmas that deplete the value of keeping one's mental health in check, this is a number that needs to decrease in order to increase good health for the population mentally. A deep dive into statistics really gives people no choice but to understand the severity of mental disorders, and this awareness is seeming to trend in the right direction. One major reason for people to still overlook mental disorders today can be the lack of ability to physically see how it impacts a person. For instance, if a person breaks their arm, one can physically see that happen and then witness the break on an x-ray. However, a person cannot just physically see someone's brain to see if it's impacted by a disorder like depression or anxiety. However, modern-day technology now allows that to happen to some extent through PET scans. A PET scan is when radioactive tracers scan the brain for activity in order to find damage or abnormalities, and they are also beneficial to see how mental illnesses impact the brain. In this diagram, the brain on the left is the one with depression, and the one on the right is one without it. The yellow matter on the diagram shows brain activity, and it is clear to see that the depressed brain has significantly less brain activity than the one on the right. This is crucial in showing how mental disorders can impact the brain's overall performance, which can in total impact the rest of the body as well. So, while the mental health disorders may have been undermined in the past, the advancements in technology now give people no choice but to accept that mental disorders are not only real, but equivalently or even more detrimental to the human body than some physical disorders. And one way that these mental disorders can arise is psychological trauma that some people have experienced throughout their lives, which is a topic that will be elaborated more by Katie.
Hi, my name is Katie Riley, and I did the topic of why psychological trauma is more damaging to the brain than physical trauma. And underneath, I wrote both types of trauma can have significant impacts on brain functioning and development. However, psychological trauma can have unique effects on the brain that are not typically seen with physical trauma. One reason for this is that psychological trauma often involves ongoing or chronic stress, which can have a cumulative impact on brain function over time. Chronic stress can cause changes in the brain structure and function, including shrinking of the brain regions such as the hippocampus, which is important for memory and learning. As for the second side, I did effects of psychological trauma. And psychological trauma can also have an impact on emotional regulation, which can lead to symptoms such as anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder, which is also known as PTSD. These conditions can have a significant impact on brain function and can lead to changes in neural pathways involved in emotion regulation and stress response. As for the third side, I proceeded to do future relationships after abuse. And psychological trauma can have a significant impact on social and interpersonal relationships, which can also affect brain development and functioning. This can be particularly important during childhood when the brain is still developing and is highly sensitive to environmental influences. Overall, while both physical and psychological trauma can have significant impacts on brain function and development, psychological trauma can have unique effects on emotional regulation and social functioning, which can have long-lasting impacts on an all-over well-being.
Hi, my name is Isabella, and I'm going to talk a little bit about PTSD and the types of trauma that cause PTSD. As you can see, the leading causes of PTSD are rape, physical assault, sexual assault, injuries from an accident, followed by stabbing or shooting incidents, unexpected or sudden death of a loved one, life-threatening illness of a child, seeing someone be killed or seriously injured, and natural disasters. Within our presentation, we state that psychological trauma is more damaging to the brain than physical trauma. In this chart, the leading cause of PTSD involves some sort of physical injury or assault. This proves that the emotional trauma from these events have a longer lasting effect than a physical injury, like a broken bone or even a wound. Now I'm going to talk to you about a woman named P.K. Phillips who suffered from PTSD for a majority of her life. Post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, is a debilitating mental illness that has affected PK for most of her life. It was triggered by traumas such as physical, mental, and sexual abuse, as well as an attack at knife point. After her attack, PK experienced flashbacks and nightmares and was unable to sleep alone in her house. By age 17, she had suffered her first panic attack and was unable to leave her apartment for weeks at a time. Years later, she had few or no symptoms and led a fairly normal life. She experienced PTSD after a traumatic event re-triggered it. She lost control of her life and was unable to make friends or get involved in her community. Taking medication and undergoing behavioral therapy marked the turning point in regaining control of her life. Now, she is rebuilding a satisfying career as an artist and enjoying her life. There's no cure for PTSD, but there are steps people can take to ensure that they never suffer as they did before. PK even explained, "I'm no longer at the mercy of my PTSD, and I would not be here today had I not had the proper diagnosis and treatment. It's never too late to seek help."
My name is Diego Alvarado, and I did trauma connected to mental health issues can lead to physical health issues. So in addition to PK Williams, I would like to speak on how trauma and other mental illnesses can lead to other physical issues. I'm going to cover numerous ways that it affects people physically. Since the mind and body are deeply connected to depression and trauma, it can attack the immune system. It can lead to one to get sick and for longer periods of time. Stress and depression trigger an immune system response in the brain that then leads to inflammation, which ultimately leads in even like more depression, which came from the initial trauma. Mental illness often results in fatigue, exhaustion, unmotivation, continuously being tired for a long period of time, eventually leads to a large decline in physical health. This can also lead for an individual to stop engaging in hygiene, exercise, and even like social interaction. And some might become used to lack of sleep and make a bad sleep schedule and develop a sleep disorder as well. Anger, anxiety is also a common side effect as a result of depression from trauma. Common anger and stress can lead to cardiac issues, and studies have shown that the risk of having a heart attack rises within the 2 hours of having an anxiety or anger attack. Depression from trauma can also lead to numerous chronic diseases. These diseases include diabetes, arthritis, cancer, and even asthma. As a major result of a major depression can also be schizophrenia, which leads to respiratory issues because you're having constant attacks. But there are many disorders that come from mental health issues that affect your physical health. And trauma can also lead to the digestive tract functions not to act normal, and it might result in weight loss, weight gain. You might not want to exercise as much. You might be unmotivated to eat. Some people have often talked about not being able to eat for a while, having no motivation to eat, and some people it even leads to eating disorders when they become anorexic. They don't have the motivation to eat. They don't have the energy to eat, nor do they want to eat or feel hungry. And I think it's really crucial to recognize the strong link between mental and physical health, because there are a lot of physical health issues that come from mental health issues that people don't really recognize, and I think people should be able to recognize them more. And I think the most important one is that people don't recognize you can actually get a genuine disorder from mental health issues, and that can just lead to a plethora of many other issues. But yeah. To end the presentation off, we just wanted to add ways to seek help for mental disorders. The phone number for the crisis suicide is 988. You can call, text, or chat at 988lifeline.org. Hospitals are also starting to have a 24-hour psychiatric units where you can go in and make sure you don't hurt yourself or others, or if you need any sort of support, you can go there. And also there are 500,000 support groups in America. What helps most is going to a therapist or psychiatrist for help. A psychiatrist will be able to prescribe medication depending on severity, determine whether you need it or not, be able to help you think through the things you cannot think through, and in the end, just help you ultimately.